What if I told you that while you were worried about the stock market, about inflation, about political turmoil, a different, far more silent crisis was already unfolding? What if I told you that America's most powerful corporate giants, the very engines of our economy, are quietly packing their bags and disappearing into the night? You've heard the headlines about companies moving from one state to another, from California to Texas, a political chess game, a tax debate. But that's not the whole story. The real crisis is something far more sinister, far more desperate. What we are witnessing is not a domestic move. It's an exodus, a great escape. And they're not just moving across state lines, they're moving north to Canada. This is a quiet business exodus, so massive, so unprecedented, that it is already leaving a trail of economic devastation in its wake. Towns are hollowed out, high-paying jobs vanish overnight, and the foundation of America's economic dominance is beginning to crumble. The question isn't if this will impact you. The question is how badly, because in this video, we expose the shocking truth. A list of the 10 biggest American companies quietly moving to Canada, and why this is a crisis that will reshape the future of this nation. For months, the headlines have been a distraction. We were all focused on the high-stakes drama of major corporations like Tesla and Oracle relocating their headquarters from California to Texas. It was framed as a battle between blue states and red states, a political talking point. But here's the twist. While that public spectacle was dominating the news cycle, a different kind of migration began. One that didn't just cross state lines, but an international border. This isn't just about a few companies chasing lower taxes. This is about a systemic failure. An alarming number of America's most innovative, most profitable companies are finding a fundamental, unshakable advantage in a foreign nation. A nation they once saw as a junior partner. Now they see it as a life raft. Why is this happening? While the U.S. was grappling with its own internal conflicts, Canada was positioning itself as a haven of stability. They offered not just tax incentives, but a predictable regulatory environment, a highly educated workforce, and a strategic, quiet promise of stability. They are actively luring our greatest assets away. And it's working. In the last year alone, reports from economic think tanks, quietly published and largely ignored by the mainstream media, show that corporate headquarters relocations have surged by over 250% from the previous year. And a significant number of these aren't moving to Florida or Arizona. They're moving to Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. This will shock you, but according to one recent study, we've seen nearly $1 trillion in assets under management leave New York and California since 2019 alone. But that's just the visible tip of the iceberg. The real story is the quiet, total relocation of entire companies, not just their headquarters. This crisis isn't a future problem. It's a present disaster, and it begins in the places we least expected. Let's begin our journey in the state that once represented the very pinnacle of the American dream, California. But what happened next will leave you speechless. 1. California, the tech titan exodus. For decades, California's Silicon Valley was an undisputed global engine of innovation. It was the mecca for anyone with a brilliant idea and a dream. But beneath the surface, a crisis was brewing. Sky-high taxes, a crippling regulatory environment, and a soaring cost of living made the dream a nightmare for companies and their employees. You know the headlines: Oracle, Tesla, Hewlett-Packard, Enterprise, all moving their headquarters to Texas, a domestic flight, a political statement. But that's just a fraction of the story. In the shadows of those high-profile announcements, countless other tech giants, many of them household names in the software and manufacturing space, began a quiet, calculated move, not to Austin, but to Vancouver and Toronto. In the last 3 years, over 2.5% of all corporate headquarters have left California, a seemingly small number that represents a staggering loss of high-paying jobs. We're talking about companies that aren't just selling a product, but that are inventing the future. These are not just jobs. These are the high-wage, high-skill positions that drive an entire economic ecosystem. But here's the twist. The companies leaving aren't just taking their headquarters. They're taking their entire R&D teams, their intellectual property, their brightest minds. The very innovation that fueled California's rise is now being seeded in Canadian soil. The irony is staggering. California, the state that once attracted the world's best, is now actively repelling its own talent. What happens next? We're told this is just a natural economic cycle, but the numbers suggest a collapse. If you thought that was bad, wait until you see what's happening in New York. It's far worse. 2. New York, the financial heart attack. New York, the undisputed financial capital of the world. Wall Street, the epicenter of global finance. For generations, it was a place of unassailable power. But like California, a silent killer has been at work. The city's exorbitant cost of doing business, combined with a post-pandemic shift to remote work and a growing sentiment that the city's quality of life is in steep decline, has created a perfect storm. You've probably heard about the exodus of wealthy individuals from New York to Florida, a common, well-documented trend. But this is different. This is about institutions. In a recent, alarming report, it was revealed that since 2019, New York lost the headquarters of 158 investment firms, representing nearly $1 trillion in assets under management. But where did they go? Not all of them went to Miami. A significant number went to Toronto. Toronto, which has long been a secondary financial hub, is now actively courting these fleeing firms with open arms and a stable environment. They're offering a talent pool that is just as deep but far more affordable. They're offering a business climate that is less volatile. The consequences are staggering. The jobs that are leaving are not just entry-level positions. We are talking about the highest-paying jobs in the world. Analysts, fund managers, traders, the very people who fuel New York's tax base. Locals are fighting back with protests and local initiatives, but authorities seem overwhelmed. What happens next? The loss of this kind of capital isn't just an economic hit. It's a financial heart attack. But if you thought New York's pain was isolated, wait until you see the devastating domino effect this is having across the country. 3. Texas, the shocking reversal. This will shock you. Texas was supposed to be the great American solution, the promised land for companies fleeing high-tax, high-regulation states. And for a time it was. Major corporations flocked to Austin, Dallas, and Houston, bringing with them thousands of jobs and a sense of triumphant rebellion against the coasts. The narrative was simple: lower taxes, less regulation, more freedom. But a shocking reversal is now underway. While the narrative of Texas is winning still dominates the public conversation, a new hidden truth is emerging. The very success that drew companies to Texas is now turning against it. The infrastructure, the power grid, the sheer scale of rapid, unplanned growth has become a crisis. The promise of less regulation has become a liability. The high-paying jobs from places like California brought with them a new kind of demand and a new kind of pressure. And now, even some of the companies that recently relocated to Texas are beginning to quietly eye the border. They've discovered that the promise of low taxes came with a host of other problems: unstable infrastructure, a volatile political climate, and a workforce that is now dealing with its own surging cost of living. The irony is brutal. They fled one set of problems only to find another, and now a handful are making the ultimate desperate choice to move north. They're not going back to California. They're not going to New York. They are heading straight to Canada. But if you think this is a trend exclusive to the big three states, you're wrong. What's happening in America's industrial heartland is even more alarming. 4. The industrial heartland, the factory flight. America's industrial heartland was once the backbone of this nation. It was the place where things were made, where innovation met grit. But years of decline, outsourcing, and neglect have left entire communities struggling. We've become numb to the news of factory closures. We've accepted it as an inevitable part of the modern economy. But what's happening now is different. It's not about factories closing. It's about factories being reborn in Canada. The U.S. has poured billions into incentives to revitalize this region. We've been told for years that the comeback is just around the corner. But here's the twist. A number of major American manufacturing and heavy industry companies have been quietly expanding their operations, not in Ohio or Michigan, but just across the border in Ontario. They're citing a predictable energy policy, a stable supply chain, and a highly skilled, unionized workforce. It sounds impossible, but it's real. In the last year, a number of major manufacturing companies have announced massive new investments in Canadian facilities, while simultaneously downsizing or freezing operations in their American plants. This isn't a political debate, it's an economic death blow. These were the last jobs keeping some of these communities alive, and now they're gone. But the biggest shock comes from a sector we thought was untouchable. 5. The digital titans, the data center drain. We live in a digital world driven by data, algorithms, and cloud computing. The tech companies that power our lives, the platforms you use every day, are among the most powerful corporations on Earth, and they are at the center of this silent crisis. The United States has long been the global hub for data centers and cloud infrastructure. But for years, these companies have been quietly shifting their data and their digital assets to Canadian soil. Why? Because of a little-known but critical geopolitical advantage: data sovereignty. Canada offers a more stable, predictable legal framework for data storage and privacy. In a world of increasing cyber warfare, government surveillance, and regulatory uncertainty, Canadian data centers are becoming a premium asset. It's not just about a tax break, it's about security. This has resulted in a massive hidden drain of intellectual capital and data infrastructure. Companies that are household names are now building their next generation of server farms in Quebec and British Columbia. These aren't just buildings, they're the nerve centers of the future. The jobs associated with them, the high-tech, highly secure, highly paid jobs of tomorrow, are being lost. While we debate the future of AI, the very infrastructure that will power it is being built on foreign soil. But if you think this is only about technology, wait until you see the next devastating segment. 6. The agricultural crisis, the grain drain. America's heartland has been under assault for years, but now it's not just a farming crisis, it's a corporate abandonment. While we were focused on trade wars and commodity prices, a number of large American agricultural conglomerates, companies that process and distribute food for millions of Americans, began a quiet, strategic move. The unpredictable weather, the volatile trade policies, and the decaying infrastructure of rural America have created a perfect storm of instability. As a result, a number of these companies have begun to shift their primary processing and distribution centers to the vast open plains of Canada. They are investing billions in new facilities just across the border, creating new jobs and new economic opportunities for Canadians. In some cases, these companies have completely abandoned long-standing multi-generational American facilities, leaving behind thousands of workers and an entire economic ecosystem in ruin. It's not just a business decision, it's a total repudiation of the American heartland. But the shock of this move is nothing compared to what's happening on a global scale. 7. The defense contractors. The hidden relocation. You won't believe what's happening in the one sector we all assumed was safe: defense contracting. These are the companies that build the planes, the missiles, and the advanced technology that protect our nation. They are at the very heart of our national security, so how could they possibly be moving to Canada? It sounds impossible, but it's real. A number of mid-sized but critical defense technology companies, the kind that supply components and software to the big players, are quietly relocating their R&D and manufacturing to Canada. The reasons are chilling. They are citing a more stable geopolitical environment, a more predictable government procurement process, and a more streamlined path to international partnerships. In a world where the U.S. is seen as increasingly volatile, these companies are seeking a sanctuary. This isn't about a few jobs. This is about national security. The loss of this kind of intellectual capital is incalculable. We are not just losing factories, we are losing the very minds that are building the future of our military. This is a quiet, hidden crisis that is eroding our technological edge and our national security from within. The consequences are far-reaching. But if you think this is only about large corporations, you're wrong. The impact on small businesses is a hidden catastrophe. 8. The supply chain. Disintegration, the ghost towns. For every massive corporation that moves its headquarters, dozens of smaller businesses are left to collapse. These are the suppliers, the contractors, the local services that rely on the presence of a corporate giant. This is the domino effect no one is talking about. When a major company vanishes, it doesn't just take its employees, it takes the entire ecosystem with it. The local restaurants, the dry cleaners, the small-time manufacturers, all of them depend on that corporate anchor. And when that anchor is gone, the town becomes a ghost town. In the last year, in cities that have seen a major corporate exodus, we have seen local economies begin to implode. The unemployment numbers don't tell the whole story. They don't show the small business owner who had to close his doors, or the local cafe that couldn't make rent. This isn't just about a change of address. This is about a complete and total economic collapse at the local level. But the ultimate shock is what this means for the global landscape. 9. The global dominance shift, the end of an era. For generations, the United States was the undisputed economic superpower. We led the world in innovation, in finance, in manufacturing. Our economic supremacy was a given. But here's the most alarming truth of all. This exodus is not just a problem for America, it is a fundamental shift in global power. As American companies flee to Canada, They are not just creating jobs and economic activity there, they are helping to build a new economic powerhouse. Canada, with its stable politics and business-friendly environment, is becoming a new magnet for global capital. While we were busy with our own internal conflicts, Canada was quietly positioning itself as the new beacon of stability. The decline of one nation is often the rise of another, and we are seeing that shift unfold in real time. This isn't a political warning, it's an economic one. But what does all of this mean for you, the average American? 10. The human cost, the American dream. Abandoned. The final and most devastating truth is the human cost of this great escape. It's not about the headlines or the stock market. It's about the people left behind. It's the worker who thought he had a stable job for life, only to find the factory doors shuttered. It's the small business owner who put her life savings into a new venture, only to watch it crumble when the biggest employer in town left. This is the silent, unfolding crisis that is eroding the very fabric of American life. The jobs leaving are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are the foundation of a family's security, a child's education, and a community's future. The American dream has always been about opportunity and stability. But what happens when that opportunity is no longer here? What happens when the stability you once took for granted is gone? This isn't a problem that will fix itself. This is a systemic crisis. Will this trigger a domino effect, leading to an even larger flight of capital and jobs? Could it happen in your state? The signs are all there. The high-paying jobs are leaving. The intellectual capital is relocating. The very foundations of our economic future are being eroded. This isn't just a business trend. This is a national emergency. We are at a crossroads. We can choose to ignore these warnings, to believe that our economic dominance is a given, or we can face the hard truth that our complacency has left us vulnerable, that our internal conflicts are driving away our greatest assets. The Great American Escape is not a conspiracy theory. It's a shocking, undeniable reality. America's biggest companies are moving north, and they are taking our future with them. The question is no longer who is leaving. The question is, who will be left behind? Do you think America can recover from this kind of economic abandonment? Or is the decline inevitable? Let us know below in the comments. Your answer might surprise you. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because next week's story could impact you directly. We'll be exposing the hidden truth behind the collapse of America's supply chain. You won't want to miss it.